One of the things I've loved about anime since I was old enough to recognize it is the often nuanced way that a series will explore various themes and impart lessons to the viewer while doing it. As we're introduced to Junpei Yoshino in these recent episodes, Jujutsu Kaisen continues this trend. Bruh. Junpei's story is fucked up, all the more so because the price that he pays, though ultimately the result of his own actions, really do have their origins and circumstances that are outside of his control. Through his story, Jujutsu Kaisen imparts a simple lesson. Vengeance has a price, one that we're often not prepared to pay in spite of what we may think. In the pursuit of vengeance, a person will often do things and associate with people, or in Junpei's case, spirits that they shouldn't and probably wouldn't normally. These actions can frequently cost a person dearly. Oh, and by the way, this video will contain spoilers, so if you're not caught up, you may want to wait before watching this. You've been warned. Now, with that being said, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
We're first introduced to Junpei as he's getting hands and feet put on him by a trio of bullies and the vindictive chick that put them up to it. It's here that we hear Junpei's first thoughts and get our first insights into his mindset.
嫌いな人間が死ぬボタンがあっても多分押せない。でも僕のことを嫌いな人間が死ぬボタンなら迷わず押す。
Man. Through various flashbacks in the episodes detailing his story, we come to understand the reason why he feels the way he does. Junpei is the victim of savage physical abuse at the hands of these bullies, with one of them going as far as to burn his face repeatedly with a lit cigarette. We come to learn later that the reason he wears his hair over the side of his face like he does is to cover the terrible burn scars on the right side of his forehead. But make no mistake, Junpei doesn't just take this abuse lying down. Though often unable or unwilling to retaliate physically, he doesn't hesitate to let his words fly, often striking a chord with his attackers, which unfortunately tends to cause them to damage him further. Seeing all this allows us, the audience, to see and understand the emotions he must feel, the anger, the bitterness, the humiliation and hopelessness that he must have to deal with on a daily basis. So when Junpei chases after Mahito after seeing him murder 3 of his tormentors, we get it. Because while we, the audience, know what Mahito is in that moment, he's delivered Junpei from the people that have tormented him. In that moment, he's become a savior, and we really can't blame Junpei for not being too broken up about murder being the method of his salvation. Mahito has delivered to Junpei the vengeance he so desired but been unable to take. He's gotten his desired outcome without having to dirty his hands, right? He can leave it alone now. He's skirted the cost of vengeance. Wrong. He pursues Mahito with 2 questions in mind. Did you do that in the theater? And most importantly, can I do that? At this point, he's made a decision. He's now willingly associating with cursed spirits. First mistake. He's now willingly seeking out the tools for further revenge in the worst way possible. And there's always a price to pay. How's that saying go? A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Well, fuck stepping, fuck dipping a toe into the water. Junpei dives into the goddamn deep end and interacts with forces far, far out of his fucking league, ultimately consorting with creatures literally made up of pure malevolence. Creatures that could never see him as anything more than a pawn in their greater game. Later on, as Yuji and Junpei meet during the course of Yuji and Nanami's investigation into the cursed spirits responsible for the theater incident, we're introduced to Junpei's mom. And honestly, she's amazing. Young, with a sense of humor, but a deep well of wisdom, the bond her and her son share is obvious. The show makes it clear that she's not naive to what he's been going through. But with her being a vet of the Japanese school system herself, it's not really a surprise. She even goes as far as to give him her blessing to not return to school, acknowledging that maybe he should explore what else is out there if school isn't doing it for him. Amazing. As she comes across Yuji and Junpei conversing, she quickly invites him back to their home for dinner, and they have an amazing time, only for it all to end in tragedy. At this point, earlier foreshadowing comes into focus for us, the audience.
それが僕の母だったら、取り乱し、真人さんを憎んでいたかもしれません。
Remember, Junpei is dealing with beings made up of pure malevolence, and he's revealed to them the person that he holds most dear. He's exposed himself and his family to beings that could never see him as more than a pawn in their greater game. That same night, once Yuji and Junpei are gone, Mahito plants one of Sukuna's fingers in Junpei's home, and Junpei's sleeping mother is murdered by a cursed spirit that feels its pull. Mahito does this knowing that Yuji, the vessel of Sukuna, has formed a relationship with his pawn, and the scheme becomes clear. Frame the remaining tormentor for the act that led to the death of Junpei's mother. Send Junpei after him, and Yuji will try to stop him. In the course of that confrontation, Yuji may be forced to form a favorable pact with Sukuna to save Junpei's life. Revenge always has a price, and ultimately in the course of all this, Junpei loses his life as well. And despite how tragic it is, how unfortunate that someone who had suffered so much couldn't have a happy ending, the fact of the matter is this: Junpei got his mother killed. There's a quote out there: "Tell me with whom you associate, and I will tell you who you are." Junpei chose to associate with curses, despite knowing the evil they had done, and ended up becoming a curse to his family. He invited that evil into his life and became the bridge that allowed that evil to touch and ultimately take him and his mother's lives. Vengeance always has a cost, one that we're often not prepared to pay. Man, I'll catch you on the next one.